There is a certain kind of settles over a frozen landscape, the kind that seems to absorb sound rather than carry it. It is not empty. It is full of small movements, distant breaths, and the slow shifting of ice beneath the weight of time. If you listen closely, you begin to notice it is alive. And long before cities, before written words, before even the first settled villages, there were people who lived within this silence. They walked across wide plains of frost and wind. They watched the horizon carefully, and they shared their world with creatures so large, so powerful, that even the ground seemed to remember their passing. It is difficult at first to imagine such a life, not because it was loud or chaotic, but because it required a kind of awareness that feels almost unfamiliar now. These early humans did not simply exist in their environment. They listened to it, they read it. Every mark in the snow, every broken branch, every distant sound carried meaning. And woven into that awareness was a quiet understanding. They were not alone. Somewhere beyond the ridge of frozen earth, something massive might be moving. Slowly, patiently. Perhaps a herd of mammoths, their long tusks catching pale light. Perhaps something else entirely, something more watchful. Something that did not move with the same heavy rhythm, but instead slipped between shadows, unseen unless it chose to be seen. This was the Ice Age, a world of extremes, but also of balance, a place where survival did not depend on strength alone, but on attention, memory, and cooperation. And at the heart of it all was a quiet mystery. What was it truly like to live side by side with creatures that could so easily end your life, yet were also essential to your survival? Imagine waking before the light fully arrives. The air is cold, but not unfamiliar. It settles into your lungs with a sharp clarity. You are wrapped in layers of fur, carefully prepared over many days, perhaps weeks. Around you, others begin to stir. There is no rush. Movement is deliberate, quiet. Every action is shaped by the understanding that the world outside is listening too. You step outside, and the land stretches out in muted tones. Whites, greys, and soft blues. The sky feels distant, almost unreachable. And for a moment, there is stillness. But then something shifts, a faint vibration beneath your feet. Not loud, not sudden, just a slow, rhythmic pulse. You pause. Others pause too. There is no need for words. The ground itself is speaking. Somewhere, not too far away, a herd of mammoths is moving. These were not rare encounters. Mammoths were part of the landscape, as constant as the wind or the cold, but they were never taken for granted. Each sighting required attention. Each movement carried risk. A mammoth was not simply large. It was immense in a way that changed how you perceive space itself. When one stood near, it blocked out part of the world. When many moved together, they reshaped the land with their presence. And yet, humans followed them. Not recklessly, not carelessly, but with a careful patience that came from generations of observation. Mammoths provided warmth, food, tools. Their bones could become shelter, their hides protection. Their very existence shaped human life in ways both obvious and subtle. But to approach them required understanding. It required timing. And timing in this world was everything. The people who lived here learned to read patterns. They noticed how herds moved with the seasons, how they paused near certain valleys, how they avoided others. They learned the difference between a calm herd and a restless one. The signs were small, a shift in posture, a slight change in sound, But those small signs could mean the difference between safety and disaster. And always there was the awareness that mammoths were not the only ones watching. Because where there is prey, there are predators. Not far from the edges of these herds, something else often lingered. Not as large, perhaps, but far more silent. A presence that did not announce itself with trembling ground, but with absence. Birds falling quiet. Wind moving through grass without interruption. A feeling, more than a sound, that something unseen was near. These were the other inhabitants of this world, the hunters who moved with intention. Saber-Tooth cats with their long curved fangs, dire wolves that travelled in coordinated groups, creatures that understood patience in a way that mirrored human awareness, but with a different purpose. To live here was to exist within a web of attention. Humans watched the mammoths, predators watched the humans, and sometimes everything watched everything else at once. But this was not a constant state of fear. It may seem that way from a distance, but the truth is quieter, more balanced. Fear, when it becomes constant, loses its usefulness. These early humans did not live in panic. They lived in readiness. There is a difference. Readiness allows for calm. It allows for rest, for conversation, for moments of stillness around a fire. It allows for the quiet sharing of food, the passing down of knowledge, the teaching of children. It allows life to continue, even in a world filled with danger. And so, as the day begins, tasks unfold with a steady rhythm. Some move to gather materials, others prepare tools. A few remain alert, watching the horizon, listening for changes in the environment. There is a kind of cooperation that does not need to be spoken aloud. Each person understands their role, not because it was assigned, but because it has been learned through time, through repetition, through shared experience. And beneath it all, there is that quiet awareness again. The ground might tremble, the wind might shift, a distant shape might appear, slowly becoming clearer against the pale horizon. A mammoth, or something else. It is this uncertainty that shapes the rhythm of life, not in a way that overwhelms, but in a way that sharpens perception. The world is never fully predictable, and so attention becomes a form of safety, a kind of gentle vigilance that hums beneath daily activity. Even at rest, this awareness remains. As the sun reaches its highest point, the light softens slightly, reflecting off ice and snow in a way that feels almost warm, though it is not. Shadows stretch slowly, time passes without urgency, and in the distance, the mammoths continue their steady movement, carving invisible paths across the land. Somewhere beyond them, unseen, a predator may be watching. But for now, there is calm. And in that calm, there is something deeply human. Because despite the size of the creatures around them, despite the constant need for awareness, these early people were not defined only by survival. They experienced curiosity. They felt wonder. To stand at a distance and watch a mammoth herd was not only a calculation of risk, it was also something else, something quieter, a recognition of scale, a recognition of life beyond oneself. The mammoths, with their long fur and slow, deliberate movements, seemed almost timeless. They moved as though they had always been there, and always would be. And for those who watched them, there may have been a sense of continuity, a feeling that the world extended far beyond any single lifetime. This kind of perspective changes how you move through the world. It slows you down. It encourages patience. It reminds you that you are part of something larger. something that does not bend easily to individual desire. And so, as the day begins to fade, the light dimming gradually into soft greys and blues, the people gather again. Fires are lit. Warmth spreads slowly. The sounds of the day settle into the background, replaced by the quiet crackle of burning wood. Stories may be shared, not loudly, not for performance, but gently, as a way of remembering, of passing along knowledge that cannot be written, only experienced and retold. Perhaps someone speaks of a close encounter, a moment when a mammoth came too near, or when a shadow moved in the wrong way, revealing the presence of a hidden predator. These stories are not meant to frighten. They are meant to teach, to prepare, because tomorrow will bring the same quiet uncertainty, the same vast landscape, the same presence of creatures both immense and unseen. And as the fire burns low and the coal begins to press in again, there is a final moment of stillness, a shared understanding that life here is delicate, but also resilient, that survival is not a single act, but a continuous process of attention, cooperation, and quiet adaptation. Outside, the land stretches endlessly. Somewhere in the distance, the mammoths move, and somewhere else, just beyond sight, something else is watching. But for now, there is rest, and the slow, steady rhythm of a world where humans and giants exist side by side, each shaping the other in ways both visible and unseen. Morning does not arrive suddenly in the Ice Age. It unfolds slowly, almost hesitantly, as if the light itself must push through layers of cold before it can fully reach the ground. The horizon softens first, a pale grey shifting toward faint silver. Then, gradually, the shapes of the land begin to emerge. Low hills, frozen grasses, long stretches of open plain that seem to extend without end. For those who live here, this slow arrival of light is familiar. It offers time to observe, time to listen. Before movement begins, there is always a pause, a moment where the world is read carefully, as though it were a quiet message waiting to be understood. The air feels different each morning. Some days it carries a sharp stillness, where even the smallest sound travels far. Other days the wind moves steadily, brushing across the land and softening the edges of distant shapes. And sometimes there is a heaviness, a subtle shift that suggests weather is changing, even before clouds gather. Nothing here is ignored. Every detail matters. A broken layer of frost can tell you that something passed during the night. A line of disturbed snow might reveal direction, speed, even hesitation. The ground is not just ground, it is a record. And those who survive learn to read it with quiet precision. As the group begins to stir, there is no loud conversation. Voices remain low, measured. Communication often happens through glances, gestures, small shifts in posture. It is not silence out of fear, but silence out of respect for the environment. Sound carries, and in a world where others are always listening, even the tone of a voice becomes important. The land itself feels open, but it is not empty. Far from it. Beneath the surface, beneath the frozen soil and packed snow, life continues in hidden ways. Small creatures burrow, roots persist, and above ground, movement is constant, even when it is not immediately visible. Herds migrate, predators follow. Birds trace invisible paths through the sky. To walk here is to move through layers of unseen activity. And so, as the day begins, each step is taken with awareness. The group may move across the plain, spreading slightly but never too far. There is safety in distance, but also in closeness. A balance must be maintained. Too close, and movement becomes restricted. Too far, and awareness is lost. Children learn this balance early. They are not shielded from the environment, but guided within it. They watch how adults pause before crossing open ground, how they position themselves with the wind, how they choose where to stand, where to sit, where to rest. These decisions may seem small, but over time they form patterns, and those patterns become instinct. The Ice Age landscape is not only cold, it is dynamic. In some areas, the ground rises gently, offering a view across long distances. These elevated places are valuable. From here, movement can be seen before it is heard. A distant herd, a lone figure, a shifting line that might indicate something larger. But these high places also carry risk. To stand against the sky is to become visible, and visibility in this world is not always an advantage. So even here, caution shapes behavior. The group does not linger long in exposed areas. Observation is quick, deliberate. Information is gathered, then movement resumes. Elsewhere, the land dips into shallow valleys. These spaces offer some shelter from the wind. They can feel quieter, more enclosed, but they also limit vision. What lies beyond the curve of the land cannot be seen until it is close. Every type of terrain presents both comfort and uncertainty, and those who live here must constantly decide which matters more. As the morning continues, the signs of life become clearer. Tracks appear more frequently. Some are large, deep impressions pressed into the earth with weight and purpose. Mammoth tracks, wide and unmistakable. Others are smaller, lighter, sometimes overlapping, sometimes scattered. A trained eye can tell the difference between a passing herd and a hunting group. There is a difference in rhythm. Prey animals move with flow with continuity. Their paths curve gently, following terrain, adjusting gradually. Predators move differently. Their tracks may pause, turn sharply, disappear and reappear. There is intention in their movement, a kind of focus that stands out against the softer patterns of grazing herds. When such tracks are found, the group slows, not out of fear, but out of attention. There may be a quiet exchange of looks, a subtle shift in direction, perhaps a decision to move around the area rather than through it. These choices are rarely discussed in long explanations. They are understood, shared knowledge passed down through countless small moments like this. The wind plays a constant role in these decisions. It carries scent, not always strongly, not always clearly, but enough to matter. A shift in wind direction can change what is detectable. It can bring the presence of animals into awareness before they are seen, or it can hide that presence entirely. So movement often aligns with the wind. To walk against it is to gather information. To walk with it is to remain hidden. Both have their place. And knowing when to choose one over the other is part of the quiet skill that defines survival here. By midday, the light reaches its fullest expression, though it remains soft compared to warmer lands. The sky stretches pale and distant, the sun offering brightness but little warmth. Shadows shorten, but they never disappear entirely. There is always a sense of depth, of space, layered upon space. It is during these hours that activity is most balanced, not too cold, not too dim. This is when decisions are made, where to move next, where to rest, whether to follow a herd or avoid it, whether to approach a known water source or seek a different path. Each choice is shaped by observation, memory, and the quiet input of the entire group. No single person holds all the knowledge. It is shared, distributed. One may notice a change in the sky, Another may recall a similar pattern from a previous season. Someone else may recognize a track that others missed. Together, these small pieces form a larger understanding. This collective awareness is one of the most important tools they have. More reliable than strength. More adaptable than any single strategy. And it allows them to move through a world filled with uncertainty without being overwhelmed by it. As the day begins to shift toward afternoon, subtle changes return. The wind may pick up slightly. The light softens again. Long shadows begin to stretch across the ground, altering the shapes of familiar objects. What was once clear becomes less certain. Depth becomes harder to judge. This is a time when caution increases. Movement slows. Not because danger is suddenly greater, but because perception becomes less reliable. And in a world where perception is everything, this matters. It is also a time when other creatures become more active. Predators that rested during brighter hours begin to stir. Their movements are still quiet, still careful, but there is a shift in energy, a readiness that mirrors the growing dimness of the land. The group feels this shift, not always through direct evidence, but through subtle cues. The way birds change their calls, the way smaller animals move more quickly, more cautiously. Even the air can seem different, carrying a tension that is difficult to describe but easy to sense. And so, as evening approaches, decisions become simpler. Find a place to rest, a place that offers some protection, some visibility, some balance between exposure and shelter. There is no perfect location, only choices that feel slightly more secure than others. Fires are prepared with care, not too large, not too bright, enough to provide warmth and a measure of protection, but not so much that they draw attention from far away. The glow of fire can travel across open land, and while it may deter some creatures, it may attract others. Everything is a balance. As the group settles, the rhythm of the day begins to fade. Movement slows. Voices remain low. There is a quiet sense of completion, not because the day was easy, but because it was navigated successfully. Food is shared. Tools are checked. Furs are adjusted. And as darkness deepens, the sky above becomes clearer. Stars begin to appear sharp and steady in the cold air. They offer no warmth, but they provide a kind of consistency. A pattern that does not change quickly, that can be relied upon in a world where so much else shifts. Some may look up at them, not with wonder alone, but with familiarity. They have seen these patterns many times, and in them there is a kind of quiet reassurance. The land below may change, herds may move, predators may come and go, but the sky remains steady, and beneath it, life continues. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with a calm persistence shaped by awareness, cooperation, and the constant, gentle reading of a world that is never truly still. Long before a mammoth is seen, it is often felt. The ground carries a message in slow pulses, almost like a distant heartbeat beneath layers of frost. It is not alarming, not sudden, just steady, a rhythm that seems older than the people who feel it. When this vibration reaches the group, there is no immediate reaction, no sharp movement, only a quiet awareness spreading from one person to another, like a shared thought passing without words. Mammoths are rarely a surprise. They move too deliberately for that, and yet every encounter with them carries a sense of scale that never fully becomes ordinary. As the group crests a low rise, the shapes begin to form in the distance. At first, they are only shadows against the pale land, large, rounded forms that shift slowly, almost blending into the horizon. But as the light settles across them, their presence becomes unmistakable. A herd, dozens, perhaps more. Their bodies are covered in thick dark fur that sways gently with each step. Long tusks curve outward and upward, catching the faint light in soft arcs. Their heads move slowly, sweeping side to side as they walk, as if they are always aware of the space around them, always measuring distance. There is no urgency in their movement, only purpose. To watch them is to feel time stretch. Each step is placed with care. Each shift of weight is deliberate. They do not rush because they do not need to. Very little in this world can challenge them directly. Their size alone creates a kind of quiet authority over the land they move through. But size is not their only strength. They are aware. Not in the same way humans are, not through constant scanning or shifting attention, but through a deep, steady perception of their surroundings. The herd moves as one, yet each individual contributes to that movement. A slight change in direction from one can ripple outward, adjusting the path of many. There is a kind of communication here that is not easily seen. Low sounds, almost too deep to hear, pass between them. Subtle shifts in posture, the positioning of bodies within the group. All of it creates a structure, a pattern that keeps them together and moving in harmony. For the humans watching, this is more than observation. It is study. Mammoths are not simply animals to be hunted. They are part of a larger system that must be understood before any action is taken. Their behavior changes with the seasons, with the weather, with the availability of food. A herd that appears calm one day may become restless the next, and that restlessness can spread quickly. Approaching them without understanding is not an option, so the group remains at a distance. They watch, they listen, they wait. There is no immediate plan to hunt. Not every encounter leads to action. In fact, most do not. Hunting a mammoth is not a simple decision. It requires coordination, timing, and an acceptance of risk that is never taken lightly. Instead, the herd is observed for signs. Are they moving steadily, or are they pausing frequently? Do they remain close together, or are individuals drifting apart? Is there a young one, slower than the others? Is there an older one, perhaps injured, perhaps tired? These are the details that matter, because while a mammoth is powerful, it is also part of a cycle. And within that cycle, there are moments of vulnerability. Not weakness exactly, but opportunity. Moments where the balance shifts just enough to allow humans to act. But those moments are rare, and patience is required. As the herd continues its slow movement, the land responds to their presence. Snow compresses beneath their weight, leaving deep impressions that will remain long after they pass. Low vegetation disappears beneath their steps. The very shape of the terrain seems to adjust, subtly altered by their path. They are not just moving through the landscape, they are shaping it. And in doing so, they influence everything around them. Other animals follow their trails, drawn by the changes they leave behind. Paths become easier to travel. Food sources are exposed. Even predators pay attention, watching the edges of the herd for signs of weakness, for moments when the balance might shift in their favor. The mammoths do not exist in isolation. They are at the center of a quiet network of life. For humans, this connection is essential. To understand mammoths is to understand much of the environment itself. Where they go, resources often follow. Where they rest, the land may offer temporary stability. But where they become unsettled, danger increases. so the group remains cautious. They adjust their position slightly, keeping the wind in their favor, ensuring that their scent does not drift toward the herd. It is not that mammoths are easily frightened, but they are not unaware. A sudden disturbance, an unfamiliar presence, can cause them to react. And when a herd of this size reacts, the consequences are not small. A stampede is not chaotic in the way one might imagine. It is focused, directed, and anything in its path becomes part of that movement, willingly or not. So distance is maintained, respect is given. Time passes slowly as the herd moves across the plain. The humans follow at the edge of visibility, not too close, not too far. This is a familiar rhythm, a kind of quiet tracking that does not seek to interrupt, only to understand. Children watch as well, their eyes moving between the mammoths and the adults around them. They are learning, not through instruction alone, but through presence. Through repeated exposure to moments like this, where patience is more valuable than action. One day, they will understand these patterns fully. For now, they observe. The light begins to shift again, softening toward afternoon. The mammoths slow slightly, some pausing to dig through the snow with their tusks, revealing the vegetation beneath. Others remain alert, their heads raised, ears moving subtly as they listen. Even in calm, there is awareness. The herd is never completely at rest, and neither are those who watch them. At times, a mammoth may turn its head toward the distant humans, not in alarm, but in recognition of presence. There is a moment, brief but noticeable, where two forms of awareness meet across the open space. Human and mammoth, both watching, both measuring. Then the moment passes and the slow rhythm resumes. It is in these quiet exchanges that something deeper can be felt. Not understanding in the way humans think of it, but a shared existence within the same environment. A mutual shaping of behavior, even without direct interaction. The humans do not dominate the mammoths. The mammoths do not ignore the humans. They coexist. Carefully. As the sun lowers, the herd begins to shift direction, moving toward a distant valley where the land dips and the wind is less harsh. The humans take note. This movement may be important later. It may indicate a place where the herd will remain for a time, or it may simply be part of a larger migration. Either way, it is remembered. Everything is remembered, because memory here is a form of survival. The group does not follow further. Instead, they begin to turn away, choosing a different path as evening approaches. The mammoths continue on, their large forms gradually becoming less distinct as distance increases. Eventually, they blend back into the landscape, their presence marked only by the tracks they leave behind and the subtle changes in the land. But even when they are no longer visible, they are not forgotten. Their movement lingers in the mind. Their patterns are stored quietly, alongside countless other observations that shape future decisions. And as the humans walk away, the ground beneath them slowly settles. The vibrations fade, the silence returns. But it is not the same silence as before. It carries the memory of something vast, something steady, something that moves through the world with a kind of quiet certainty. And in that memory, there is both respect and understanding. Because to live here among creatures like these is not simply to survive alongside them. It is to adapt to their presence, to learn from their rhythms, and to accept that the world is shared with beings whose scale and strength shape every step you take. There are moments in the Ice Age when the world feels open, wide, and easily understood. The horizon stretches clearly. Movement can be seen from far away. Sounds travel without obstruction. In these moments, the land feels almost gentle, even in its coldness. But there are other moments, quieter and more uncertain, when the same landscape seems to close in slightly, not through physical change, but through a subtle shift in awareness. It is in these moments that the unseen becomes important, because not everything announces itself the way mammoths do. Some creatures leave no trembling in the ground, no slow, steady rhythm to follow. Instead, they exist within stillness, within patience, within the spaces between movement and sound. And among these, the saber-tooth cat moves with a presence that is both powerful and nearly invisible. The first sign is often absence. Birds that had been calling softly fall quiet. Small animals that moved through the edges of vision disappear into burrows or brush. Even the wind, though unchanged, seems to carry less sound. It is not that the environment stops. It simply becomes more focused, as if something within it has drawn attention inward. The group notices this, not all at once and not in the same way. One person may pause slightly, their gaze shifting toward a distant rise. Another may slow their steps, adjusting their position within the group. A third may glance at the ground, searching for signs that confirm what the body already senses. There is no alarm, only awareness. Saber-tooth cats do not rush into visibility. Their strength lies in timing, in choosing the exact moment when movement matters most. Until then, they remain still, or move so slowly that their motion blends with the environment itself. Their bodies are built for this kind of presence. Low to the ground, powerful through the shoulders, their weight distributed in a way that allows them to move quietly despite their size. Their fur blends with the muted tones of the Ice Age landscape, soft browns and pale shades that mirror the earth and frost. And then, of course, there are the teeth, long, curved, unmistakable. But those are not seen first. What is seen, if anything is seen at all, is shape, a slight difference in the line of a hill, a form that does not quite match the surrounding terrain, a shadow that remains still when others shift. These are the details that reveal presence, but only to those who are looking carefully. And the humans here have learned to look carefully. They do not search frantically. That would be counterproductive. Instead, they let their attention settle, allowing the environment to reveal what is different. It is a quiet process, one that requires patience and trust in perception. After a moment, the shape becomes clearer. There, at the edge of a low ridge, partially obscured by uneven ground, a saber-tooth cat rests. It is not crouched in preparation to strike, not yet. Its body is relaxed, though not without readiness. Its head is raised slightly, eyes open, watching, always watching. It has likely been there for some time. Perhaps it observed the group long before it was noticed in return. Perhaps it followed at a distance, moving when the humans moved, stopping when they stopped. Its presence is not accidental. It is intentional, measured, but it is not necessarily a threat in this moment. Saber-tooth cats are hunters, but they are also selective. They do not waste energy on uncertain outcomes. A group of humans, aware and organized, does not present an easy opportunity. There are too many variables, too much unpredictability. And so, the cat waits, observing, gathering information, just as the humans do. There is a quiet exchange here, though no words are spoken. The humans adjust their formation slightly, not dramatically, but enough to reinforce their awareness. They remain close enough to support one another, but not so close that movement becomes restricted. Tools are held more deliberately, not raised in aggression, but ready. No one runs. Running changes the situation. Running introduces chaos, and chaos is where predators find advantage. So instead, they remain steady, calm, present. The saber-toothed cat continues to watch. Its tail may shift slightly, its ears move, tracking subtle sounds. Its breathing is slow, controlled. Everything about it suggests patience, a willingness to wait as long as necessary for the right moment. But that moment does not come. Not today. After a time, the cat lowers its head slightly, its interest shifting. Perhaps it has recognized that this group is not worth the effort. Perhaps something else, somewhere else, has drawn its attention. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, it begins to move, not toward the humans, away. Its body flows over the ground with quiet strength, each step placed carefully, each movement controlled. There is no sudden departure, no rush, just a gradual fading back into the landscape until the shape that once stood out becomes indistinguishable from the terrain. And then it is gone, but the feeling it leaves behind lingers. Not fear exactly, something quieter, a reminder, because encounters like this are not rare, but they are never taken lightly. Saber-toothed cats exist within the same patterns as the humans, but with different intentions. They follow herds. They observe movement. They learn, in their own way, the rhythms of the land. And so, the humans must do the same. They continue on, their pace unchanged, but their awareness slightly heightened. The environment begins to return to its earlier state. Birds call again, cautiously at first. Small animals reappear. The subtle tension fades, replaced once more by the steady quiet of the Ice Age. But something has shifted. Every encounter adds to memory. Every observation becomes part of a larger understanding. The group now knows that a saber-toothed cat moves within this area. They know its general direction, its behavior, its level of interest. These details will shape future decisions, even if they are not spoken aloud. This is how knowledge grows, not through single events, but through accumulation. As the day continues, the land opens again, offering clearer views and longer sightlines. The group moves with renewed steadiness, their attention still active, but no longer focused on immediate threat. The rhythm of walking returns, slow and deliberate, shaped by the terrain and the quiet needs of the moment. Yet even in this calm, the presence of predators remains part of the world, not as a constant danger, but as a constant possibility, and that possibility influences everything. Where to walk, when to rest, how to position the group, how to respond to subtle changes in the environment. These decisions are not made with fear, but with understanding, because to live here is not to avoid predators entirely. That would be impossible. It is to coexist with them, to recognize their patterns, to respect their capabilities, and to move in ways that reduce conflict rather than invite it. As the light begins to fade once more, the group finds a place to settle. The land offers a slight rise, enough to see the surrounding area, but not so exposed as to create vulnerability. Fires are prepared again, small and controlled. The familiar routine unfolds, shaped by repetition and quiet cooperation. But tonight, as they sit near the warmth, there may be a brief mention of the encounter, a gesture, a glance toward the direction where the cat was seen, a shared understanding, not as a story of danger, but as a note within the ongoing rhythm of life, because tomorrow the land will still hold these silent watchers, and the humans will continue to move within that same shared space, guided not by fear, but by awareness, patience, and the quiet knowledge that they are never the only ones observing. There are sounds in the Ice Age that carry farther than others. The wind, for example, moves constantly, brushing across the land in long, steady currents. It whispers against fur, slides over frozen ground, and sometimes rises into a low, endless hum. It is familiar, almost comforting in its consistency. The shifting of ice, too, has its own quiet language, small cracks and distant groans that speak of pressure and time. But then there is another sound, one that does not belong to the land itself, but to those who move across it. A howl. It begins faintly, almost blending with the wind, easy to miss if attention is elsewhere. But once it is noticed, it becomes unmistakable. A long, rising note that stretches across distance, then falls away just as slowly, not sharp, not frantic, measured. And after a pause, another answers, from a different direction, slightly closer. The group pauses, not in alarm, but in recognition. Dire wolves. Unlike the saber-tooth cat, which moves alone or in small numbers, dire wolves are rarely solitary. They exist as a group, a coordinated presence that relies not on stealth alone, but on cooperation. Their strength lies not in size, though they are large, but in their ability to move together with purpose. The howls are not random. They are communication, position, distance, intention. Each call carries information, shaped by tone and timing, understood by those who know how to listen. The humans do not interpret every detail, but they understand enough. The wolves are nearby, not immediately close, but within the same broad stretch of land, and they are active. The group listens carefully as the sounds continue, fading and returning, sometimes overlapping, sometimes spaced apart. There is a rhythm to it, a pattern that suggests movement. The wolves are not stationary. They are traveling, adjusting their positions relative to one another, maintaining connection even across distance. This is how they hunt, not through sudden bursts of action, but through coordination that unfolds over time. The humans remain still for a moment longer, allowing the sound to settle into understanding. Then, slowly, movement resumes. There is no need to retreat or change direction dramatically. The wolves are not focused on them, not yet. But awareness increases, quiet and steady. Dire wolves do not approach carelessly, they observe. Much like the saber-tooth cat, they gather information before acting. But where the cat relies on solitude and precision, the wolves rely on numbers and persistence. They test boundaries, they explore possibilities, and when they act, they do so together. As the group continues across the plain, the landscape offers subtle clues of the wolves' presence. Tracks appear in the snow, overlapping and crisscrossing, forming patterns that are more complex than those of solitary animals. These are not random movements. They show direction, but also hesitation, turning, circling. The wolves have been here, recently. The tracks are fresh, edges still sharp, not yet softened by wind. The humans slow slightly, examining the patterns without stopping completely. To pause too long in open ground is not ideal. Instead, they gather information while maintaining movement. The direction of the tracks, the spacing between them, the depth of each print. All of it adds to the picture forming in their minds. A pack passed through. Several individuals. moving with purpose, not wandering. This matters because a pack on the move is different from a pack at rest. Movement suggests intent, and intent shapes decisions. The group adjusts their path slightly, not to avoid entirely, but to remain aware of where the wolves might be headed. This is not fear-driven avoidance. It is strategic awareness, a way of moving through shared space without creating unnecessary overlap. The howls sound again, closer this time. Not loud, but clearer. There is a depth to the sound, a resonance that seems to settle into the chest as much as the ears. It carries across the land, bending slightly with the wind, reaching places that sight cannot. The group instinctively tightens its formation, not tightly clustered, but closer than before. There is safety in proximity when facing a coordinated threat. Children move nearer to the center. Adults shift their positions, some slightly ahead, others trailing just enough to maintain a wider field of awareness. Tools are held more firmly now. Still not raised, still not aggressive, but ready, always ready. As the day progresses, the presence of the wolves becomes more tangible. A distant movement on the horizon. Low shapes, barely visible against the muted tones of the land. They do not approach directly. Instead, they move parallel, keeping distance, observing. This is part of their process. They are assessing, determining whether this group of humans presents an opportunity or a risk. And for now, the answer is unclear. The humans do not change their pace dramatically. They do not run. They do not attempt to chase the wolves away. Instead, they continue with steady movement, maintaining awareness, showing through their behavior that they are not vulnerable, not disorganized, not easy. This is a form of communication as well, not through sound, but through presence. The wolves continue to follow at a distance for some time, their shapes appearing and disappearing with the terrain. Occasionally, one may pause, standing still, watching more intently than the others. Then it moves again, rejoining the rhythm of the pack. There is no immediate conflict, only observation. Eventually, as the light begins to soften toward afternoon, the wolves' path begins to diverge. Their movement shifts, angling away from the humans, drawn perhaps by another scent, another opportunity that aligns more closely with their needs. The howls change. They become less frequent, more distant, and gradually they fade. The group continues walking, the tension easing slightly, though not disappearing entirely. Encounters like this are never forgotten as soon as they end. They linger, informing the quiet calculations that shape the rest of the day. As evening approaches, the group reaches a place that offers some natural advantage, a shallow rise with a clear view in multiple directions. The ground here is firm, less disturbed, offering a stable place to rest. Fires are prepared once more. The familiar routine unfolds. But tonight, there is an added layer of awareness. The memory of the wolves remains present, not as fear, but as context, because the wolves are still out there, moving, hunting, communicating across the darkening land. As the fire begins to glow, casting soft light against the surrounding ground, the sounds of the Ice Age return to their quieter forms. The wind settles. The distant movements of animals continue, mostly unseen. And above, the sky opens once again, stars emerging slowly, steady and unchanging. Somewhere far off, a final howl may rise, faint, almost lost in distance, a reminder that the pack continues its work, guided by its own rhythms, its own understanding of the land. And here, within the small circle of firelight, the humans rest, aware, calm, part of the same vast system of movement and survival, where no creature exists alone, and every sound, every step, every decision carries meaning within the quiet, endless landscape of ice. In a world shaped by cold, distance, and constant awareness, survival is not built on strength alone. It is built on connection. No single person, no matter how skilled or observant, could move through this landscape for long without others. The challenges are too varied, the environment too unpredictable, and the presence of large animals, both gentle and dangerous, creates a world where shared knowledge becomes the most valuable resource of all. As morning returns once more, slowly spreading its pale light across the land, the group wakes not as separate individuals, but as something more unified. Movement begins gradually, each person adjusting to the cold, to the stiffness of rest, to the quiet continuation of life in a place that never fully relaxes its grip. There is no leader in the way modern minds might imagine, no single voice that directs every action. Instead, there is a kind of fluid guidance, where experience shapes influence and awareness shifts depending on the situation. One person may take the lead when reading tracks, another when choosing a place to rest, another when preparing tools or tending to fire. Roles are not fixed, they flow, and this flexibility allows the group to adapt. As they begin their movement across the frozen terrain, small tasks unfold almost without thought. Someone adjusts the furs of a younger member, ensuring warmth is held close to the body. Another checks the bindings of a tool, tightening a strap that may have loosened overnight. These actions are not assigned. They are noticed, then done. This is how cooperation exists here, quietly, consistently, without the need for instruction. The land offers no forgiveness for neglect. A loose binding, a tear in fur, a moment of inattention. These small things can grow into larger problems quickly. And so, the group moves with a shared sense of responsibility, each person aware not only of themselves, but of those around them. This awareness extends beyond immediate tasks. It shapes how they walk, how they rest, how they respond to the world. When crossing open ground, spacing is maintained carefully. Not too close, not too far. Each person positioned in a way that allows for both visibility and support. If one stops, others notice. If one shifts direction slightly, the group adjusts as a whole, like a slow, steady current flowing across the land. There is no rush. Speed is rarely the answer here. Instead, efficiency comes from alignment, from moving together in a way that conserves energy, maintains awareness, and reduces unnecessary risk. As the morning continues, the group encounters signs of a recent passage. Not mammoths this time, but smaller prey animals. The tracks are lighter, more scattered, weaving gently across the snow in patterns that suggest grazing rather than urgency. This presents an opportunity, but not an immediate one. Hunting is never impulsive. It requires coordination. And so, the group slows, gathering silently as they assess the situation. Eyes move between tracks, terrain, and wind direction. No one speaks loudly. Instead, small gestures guide understanding. A hand indicating direction, a glance confirming agreement. A plan begins to form, not fully articulated, but understood. A few members begin to shift outward, widening the group slightly. Others remain central, maintaining the core. The movement is subtle, gradual, designed not to disturb the environment more than necessary. This is how cooperation becomes action, not through sudden commands, but through shared intention. Each person knows their role within the moment, shaped by experience and observation. There is trust here, built over time, reinforced through countless small interactions where reliability matters more than anything else. The hunt itself, when it happens, is not loud. It unfolds with patience, positioning, timing, and even then, success is never guaranteed. But whether successful or not, the process strengthens the group because it reinforces connection. It builds shared memory, and it reminds each person that survival is not an individual achievement, but a collective one. Afterward, regardless of the outcome, there is no prolonged celebration or disappointment. Energy must be conserved. Attention must return to the environment. The world does not pause to acknowledge success or failure. It continues, steady and indifferent, and so do they. As the day moves forward, the group finds a place to rest briefly, not a full stop, but a moment to recover, to adjust, to take in the surroundings. Here the land offers a slight break from the wind, a shallow dip that provides some shelter without limiting visibility too much. They sit, they breathe, they share small amounts of food. There is no excess. Everything is measured. And yet, within this simplicity, there is comfort. Not the comfort of warmth or abundance, but the comfort of presence, of being part of something stable within an unstable world. Children remain close, observing, learning not through direct instruction, but through immersion. They see how adults remain alert even at rest, how eyes move across the horizon, how ears remain tuned to distant sounds. They learn that rest does not mean absence of awareness. It means a quieter form of it. As they rise again and continue their journey, the environment shifts slightly. The wind changes direction, carrying new scents. The light softens, creating longer shadows that alter the perception of distance and shape. Each of these changes is noticed, not always consciously, but through a kind of embodied awareness that has developed over time. One person may pause briefly, tilting their head as if listening to something beyond hearing. Another may adjust their path slightly, responding to a subtle change in terrain. These actions ripple through the group, creating a continuous adjustment that keeps them aligned with the environment. This is cooperation at its deepest level, not just between people, but between people and the world around them. They do not move against the land, they move with it. As afternoon fades toward evening, the group begins to consider where to settle. This decision is never random. It is shaped by multiple factors: visibility, shelter, proximity to resources, and the presence or absence of recent animal activity. They scan the land carefully. A slight rise offers visibility. A cluster of rocks may provide wind protection. Tracks in the area are examined. Nothing is overlooked. Finally, a place is chosen. Not perfect, but sufficient. And sufficiency here is enough. As preparations begin, roles emerge naturally once more. Some gather materials for fire. Others prepare the ground, clearing away loose snow to create a stable base. Tools are set within reach. Furs are adjusted. Everything has its place. Everything serves a purpose. As the fire comes to life, its warmth spreading slowly, the group settles into the familiar rhythm of evening. The light flickers gently, casting soft shadows that move with the shifting flames. Beyond this small circle, the land returns to darkness, vast and quiet. There may be soft conversation, not constant, not loud, but present. Moments of shared reflection, perhaps, though not in words that seek to explain everything. Sometimes, a simple glance or a small gesture carries enough meaning. because understanding here is not always spoken. It is lived. As night deepens, the group rests in shifts. Some sleep while others remain lightly awake, maintaining awareness of the surroundings. This too is part of cooperation. Rest is shared, just as effort is shared. No one is left entirely alone with responsibility. And so the cycle continues, day into night, movement into stillness, awareness into rest, all held together by the quiet strength of cooperation, a force as essential as any tool or strategy, shaping every step taken across the frozen, ever-watchful world. Cold in the Ice Age is not simply a condition. It is a presence. It settles into the air, into the ground, into the body itself. It is constant, though never exactly the same. Some days it presses sharply, biting at exposed skin, tightening muscles, shortening breath. Other days it lingers more quietly, a steady weight that must be managed rather than resisted. To live here is not to escape the cold. It is to work with it. And over time, humans have learned that survival depends not only on awareness of animals and land, but on the careful creation of tools and shelter that allow the body to endure what the environment continuously demands. As morning light begins its slow return, the group stirs once more from rest. The fire has dimmed to embers, still warm beneath a thin layer of ash. Someone gently breathes life back into it, adding small pieces of fuel, coaxing flame without sudden brightness. Fire is never wasted. It is preserved, guided, treated almost as a companion rather than a resource. Around the fire, the shapes of shelter are visible. They are not permanent structures, not in the way modern minds might imagine. There are no fixed walls or lasting roofs. Instead, shelter here is something assembled and disassembled as needed, shaped by available materials and the demands of movement. Large bones, when they can be found, are valuable. The curved ribs of a mammoth, long and strong, can be arranged to form a frame. Over this, thick hides are stretched, layered carefully to block wind while allowing some movement of air. Snow itself becomes part of the structure, packed against the sides to insulate, to seal gaps, to soften the relentless flow of cold. The result is not complete protection, but it is enough to reduce exposure, enough to allow rest, enough to preserve energy for the tasks of the day. Inside these shelters, warmth gathers slowly. Not a strong heat, but a gentle holding of what the body produces and what the fire offers. The difference between outside and inside may be small, but in this environment, even small differences matter. Children are often positioned toward the center, not by rule, but by instinct. Their smaller bodies lose heat more quickly, and so they are placed where warmth is most consistent. Adults arrange themselves around them, forming an additional layer of protection. This is not a conscious barrier, but a natural outcome of care and experience. As the group begins preparing for movement, attention turns to tools. These are not many, but each one is important. A spear, carefully shaped and hardened, its tip sharpened with patience and precision. A stone blade, chipped into form through repeated strikes, each angle chosen deliberately. Scrapers for working hides. Bindings made from sinew, strong and flexible, used to hold materials together. There is no excess. Every tool serves a purpose, and every tool requires maintenance. Before departure, each item is checked. A small crack in a stone edge may be addressed, a loose binding tightened, a worn section of a handle reinforced. These actions take time, but they are never rushed. A tool that fails at the wrong moment can shift the balance of an entire situation. And so, care is given, not out of habit alone, but out of necessity. Clothing, too, is part of this careful preparation. Layers of fur are arranged with attention to both warmth and movement. The outer layers must resist wind and moisture. The inner layers must hold heat close to the body without restricting motion. Each piece has been shaped over time, adjusted, repaired, adapted to the needs of the individual. There is no uniformity. Each person's clothing reflects their experience, their role, their body. But all share the same purpose: to create a barrier between human and cold that is flexible, reliable, and enduring. As the group steps out into the open, the cold greets them once more. Sharp, clear, unavoidable. But it is no longer an enemy. It is a condition to be managed. Movement begins slowly, allowing the body to adjust. Breath deepens. Muscles warm gradually. The initial stiffness fades, replaced by a steady rhythm of walking that generates its own heat. This is another form of adaptation. To move in a way that maintains warmth without exhausting energy. To balance effort and conservation. To understand the limits of the body and work within them. As they travel, the land offers materials that may be used later. Branches, though scarce, are gathered when found. Bones from previous hunts are noted, their location remembered. Even small pieces of usable material are not ignored. In a place where resources are limited, everything has potential value. Nothing is taken without thought. Nothing is wasted. At times, the group may pause to work on a tool directly, shaping a new edge or adjusting a broken piece. These moments are quiet, focused. The act of tool-making is not hurried. It requires attention, patience, and a steady hand. A stone is struck against another, not randomly, but with intention. Each strike removes a small piece, gradually forming the desired shape. The sound is soft, controlled, a rhythmic tapping that blends with the ambient quiet of the land. This process is not only practical, it is also reflective. Time spent shaping a tool is time spent observing, thinking, preparing. It connects the present moment to future need. As the day continues, the group encounters a place where the land offers temporary shelter, a natural formation of rock perhaps, where wind is reduced and the ground is more stable. These places are noted, sometimes used briefly, sometimes remembered for later. Shelter is not always something built. Sometimes it is something found, and knowing where to find it is as important as knowing how to create it. By afternoon, the cold may shift slightly, influenced by changes in wind or light. Shadows stretch longer, and with them comes a subtle drop in temperature. The body responds by adjusting movement, by conserving energy where possible. This is not conscious in every moment. It is learned, over time, through repetition. As evening approaches, the group once again considers where to rest. The decision is shaped by the same factors as before, but also by the state of the group itself. Fatigue, resource levels, recent encounters, all influence the choice. A place is selected. Preparation begins. Shelter is assembled with practiced efficiency. Bones are positioned. Hides are stretched. Snow is packed into place. Fire is coaxed into life once more, its warmth spreading gradually. Inside, the space becomes a small world of its own, contained, protected, not separate from the larger environment, but slightly removed from its harshest elements. As darkness settles outside, the interior of the shelter holds a different kind of stillness. Sounds are softened. Light flickers gently. The presence of others is close, reassuring. Tools are placed within reach, clothing is adjusted, food is shared, and slowly the body begins to rest. But even here, within this constructed space, awareness does not disappear. It shifts, becomes quieter, more internal. Ears still listen for changes in the wind, for distant sounds that do not belong, for the subtle signals that something outside has shifted. Because shelter does not remove the world, it only softens its edge. And as sleep begins to take hold, one by one, the group settles into a rhythm of rest that is never complete, but always sufficient. Outside, the cold continues its steady presence. The land stretches endlessly. Creatures move through darkness unseen. But within this small, carefully created space, there is warmth, there is connection, and there is the quiet, enduring knowledge that through tools, shelter, and shared effort, humans have found a way to exist within a world that offers no comfort freely, yet can be shaped gently and persistently into something survivable. Not every moment in the Ice Age is shaped by danger. Though the land holds constant uncertainty, though large animals move across the horizon and unseen predators pass through shadowed spaces, much of life unfolds in quieter ways. There are long stretches of time when nothing dramatic happens. No sudden encounters, no urgent decisions, only the steady, patient rhythm of daily living. And within that rhythm, something deeply human takes form. As the morning light slowly returns once more, soft and pale across the frozen land, the group begins its gradual awakening. There is no rush to stand immediately. The body warms slowly, encouraged by the fading embers of the fire, by the shared presence of others nearby, by the gentle transition from sleep into awareness. A hand adjusts a fur covering. Someone exhales softly into the cold air, watching the breath fade. Another shifts slightly, listening before fully opening their eyes. These small actions are part of the beginning, a quiet ritual repeated day after day. Eventually, movement spreads through the group. One person steps outside first, pausing just beyond the shelter to read the morning, the sky, the wind, the ground. Others follow in time, not all at once, but in a gradual unfolding that mirrors the slow arrival of light. The land looks familiar, and yet it is never exactly the same. A thin layer of new frost may have settled overnight, softening the edges of old tracks. The wind may have shifted slightly, altering the direction of scent. A distant shape might appear where there was none before, too far to identify, but noted nonetheless. Everything is observed, even in calm. But once this initial awareness is established, the day begins to take on a gentler pace. There are tasks to be done, but they are not always urgent. Some remain near the shelter, tending to materials that need attention. A hide may be stretched and worked, its surface carefully scraped and softened to prepare it for future use. This is slow work, requiring patience and steady hands. The sound of scraping is soft, rhythmic, blending with the quiet of the morning. Others may gather small resources nearby, bits of wood, fragments of bone, anything that might serve a purpose later. These movements are unhurried. There is no need to travel far today. Not every day requires long journeys. Children remain close, moving between tasks, watching more than doing. Their learning is continuous, shaped by observation rather than instruction. They notice how adults sit, how they hold tools, how they pause to look at the land even during simple work. They begin to understand that awareness is not only for moments of danger, It is part of everything. As the sun rises higher, though its warmth remains limited, the light softens the world in subtle ways. Shadows shorten slightly. The colors of the land become clearer, even if they remain muted. There is a quiet clarity to these hours, a sense that time has opened just enough to allow for slower, more reflective activity. Food is prepared carefully. Nothing is wasted. Small portions are shared, eaten with attention rather than haste. The act of eating is not separate from the environment. It is part of the same rhythm, shaped by availability, by memory of past scarcity, by an understanding that each meal supports the next movement, the next decision. Afterward, there may be moments of stillness, not sleep, not full rest, but a pause. Some sit quietly, eyes half focused on the distance. Others adjust tools or simply breathe, allowing the body to settle into a state of calm readiness. There is no pressure to fill every moment with action. Energy must be preserved. This is something modern life often forgets, but here it is essential. As midday approaches, activity may increase slightly. Perhaps the group decides to move a short distance, not far, just enough to reposition, to explore a nearby area, to maintain familiarity with the surroundings. Movement is gentle, unforced, shaped by curiosity as much as necessity. The land reveals small details, a cluster of tracks that suggest recent animal passage, a patch of ground where vegetation is more accessible, a shift in terrain that offers new perspective. These are not dramatic discoveries, but they matter. They add to the quiet map that exists in memory, a mental understanding of the environment that grows richer with each passing day. At times, there may be distant reminders of the larger world, a faint outline of mammoths far across the plain, moving slowly as they always do, a brief glimpse of something smaller and faster, disappearing behind a rise before it can be clearly identified, or perhaps a distant sound, not threatening, but enough to draw attention for a moment before fading into the background. These reminders are accepted. They do not interrupt the calm. They exist alongside it. As afternoon stretches onward, the light begins its gradual shift again. Shadows lengthen. The air cools slightly, though it was never warm to begin with. The group naturally begins to gather more closely, their movements drawing them back toward a shared center. There is a sense of return, not because they have gone far, but because the day itself is beginning to close. Tasks that were started are completed or set aside. Materials are gathered. Tools are placed where they can be easily reached. Everything begins to align toward rest. The shelter, whether newly assembled or still standing from the night before, becomes the focus once more. Adjustments are made, openings are checked, the ground is prepared again, ensuring a stable place for the hours ahead. Fire returns as a central element. Its light flickers gently, not harsh, not overwhelming. It creates a boundary, a small space of warmth within the vast cold expanse. Around it, the group settles, their presence forming a quiet circle of shared existence. Evening is not a time of activity. It is a time of slowing. There may be soft conversation, though words are few. Communication often happens through shared presence rather than speech. A glance, a small movement. The understanding that comes from being together over many days, many seasons. Children grow quieter. Their energy fades naturally, shaped by the rhythm of the day. They lean into the warmth, into the closeness of others, their awareness softening into rest. Adults remain attentive, though not tense. The This is a different kind of awareness, one that allows for calm while still holding space for the unexpected. Outside, the land continues its quiet life. Creatures move, the wind shifts, the distant world carries on, largely unseen. But within the shelter, within the small circle of firelight, there is a sense of balance, not safety in the absolute sense, but stability, a feeling that, for this moment, everything is aligned well enough. As night deepens, rest comes gradually, not all at once. Some sleep sooner. Others remain awake a little longer, listening, watching, maintaining the gentle vigilance that never fully disappears. And so the day ends much as it began, not with sudden change, but with a slow transition, a fading of light into darkness, a shifting of activity into stillness, a quiet acceptance of the rhythm that defines life here, where even in a world filled with giants and hidden dangers, there is space for calm, for routine, and for the simple, enduring patterns of daily existence. There is a quiet balance that settles over those who live long enough in a world like this. It is not the absence of danger, nor is it the constant presence of fear. It is something in between, a steady awareness that danger exists, paired with deeper understanding that fear alone cannot guide every decision. Over time, this balance becomes part of how a person moves, how they think, how they rest. It shapes not only survival, but the experience of being alive within this vast, shifting landscape. As another day begins to unfold beneath a pale and distant sky, the group moves with the same measured rhythm that has carried them through many days before. But beneath their movements, beneath the quiet cooperation and steady awareness, there is something less visible, something that cannot be seen in tracks or heard in distant calls. It is memory, not just of events, but of patterns, of what has happened before, of what might happen again. Each person carries within them a collection of moments, encounters with mammoths, glimpses of saber-toothed cats watching from stillness, the distant howls of dire wolves moving across the land. These memories do not sit heavily. They do not weigh down the present. Instead, they inform it, quietly shaping perception without overwhelming it. This is how fear changes over time. It becomes more refined, less sharp, less immediate, not because the world has become safer, but because understanding has grown. The group does not wake each day in alarm. They wake in readiness, and readiness allows space for calm. As they walk across the frozen terrain, the land stretches out before them in familiar tones, whites and greys, soft shadows, distant shapes. Nothing seems urgent. Nothing demands immediate attention. And yet, awareness remains active, not as tension, but as a steady presence beneath each step. This is the balance: to move without panic, to observe without distraction, to respond without hesitation when needed, but not before. At times, this balance is tested. A sudden movement in the distance, a shift in wind that carries an unfamiliar scent, a sound that does not fit with the expected rhythm of the environment. In these moments, attention sharpens, but it does not fracture. The group pauses. They observe. They wait just long enough to understand. And then, if necessary, they act. But often, the moment passes. The movement resolves into something harmless. The scent fades. The sound reveals itself as part of the natural world rather than a threat. And so, life continues. This ability to remain steady, even when uncertainty arises, is not something that comes easily. It is learned through repetition, through experience, through the quiet accumulation of days, lived within the same patterns of risk and safety. Children especially learn this balance slowly. At first, everything may feel large, overwhelming. The sight of a distant mammoth, the echo of a wolf's call, the sudden stillness of birds. These can stir a kind of raw awareness that is difficult to manage. But over time, guided by the calm presence of those around them, this awareness becomes more focused, more contained. They begin to understand that not every sound signals danger, that not every movement requires action, that sometimes the most important response is simply to watch. This is how fear becomes knowledge, and how knowledge becomes calm. As the day unfolds, the group moves through areas that hold traces of past encounters. A place where mammoths once passed, the deep tracks now softened by time. A ridge where a saber-tooth cat was seen days ago, its presence now only a memory. A stretch of land where wolf tracks once crossed, now empty and still. These places are not avoided, nor are they approached carelessly. They are acknowledged, understood as part of the larger environment. This is another form of balance, to neither cling to fear nor ignore it, to allow memory to inform, but not control. As afternoon light stretches across the land, the group pauses briefly near a shallow rise. From here, the horizon opens wide, offering a view that feels almost endless. There is no immediate movement visible, no large shapes shifting across the distance, only the quiet expanse of the Ice Age, calm in its vastness. Moments like this are important. They offer perspective. They remind those who stand here that while danger exists, it is not constant, that the world is not always in motion toward conflict, that there are long stretches of time where life simply continues, steady and uninterrupted. Some may stand a little longer here, not out of necessity, but out of something quieter, a recognition of space, of distance, of the sheer scale of the world they inhabit. In these moments, fear feels smaller, not because it disappears, but because it is placed within a larger context. It becomes one part of a much wider experience. As the group moves on, this sense of balance carries with them. It shapes how they respond to new signs, how they interpret the environment, how they decide when to act and when to remain still. It also shapes their relationships with one another. Trust becomes essential, not only in shared tasks, but in shared perception. When one person pauses, others notice. When one person senses a change, it is respected. This mutual trust reduces the need for constant vigilance at the individual level. It allows awareness to be distributed, shared across the group, rather than carried alone. And in this shared awareness, there is a kind of quiet comfort. Not safety, exactly, but stability. A sense that no one faces the world entirely on their own. As evening begins its slow arrival once more, the land shifts gently into softer tones. The air cools further. Shadows lengthen, blending into one another until the distinction between them fades. The group prepares to settle again, not hurried, not tense, but with the same steady care that defines all their actions. A place is chosen, shelter is arranged, fire is brought to life, and as they gather within this small space of warmth and light, the balance of the day settles into stillness. There may be quiet reflection, not spoken in long thoughts, but felt in the body, a sense of having moved through the day without disruption, of having responded to the world as needed without excess. This is not something celebrated. It is simply acknowledged. Another day lived within the balance, another cycle completed. As night deepens, the sounds of the land return to their quieter forms. The distant movements of animals, the shifting of wind, the soft presence of a world that continues beyond the small circle of human life. And within that circle, rest begins again, not free from awareness, but held within it, because to live here is to understand that fear and calm are not opposites. They are part of the same system, each informing the other, each necessary, and when held in balance, they allow life to continue, quietly and steadily, even in a world shaped by giants and shadows. There is a certain stillness that belongs not just to a place but to time itself. It is the kind of stillness that lingers long after movement has passed, long after sounds have faded, long after the shapes that once filled the horizon are no longer there. In the Ice Age, this stillness was never empty. It was always full of life, of presence, of slow and steady rhythms that shaped every moment. But now, when we imagine it from a distance, it feels like something softer, almost like a memory, and perhaps that is what it has become. A memory carried not in words, but in traces, in bones beneath the earth, in patterns etched into ancient landscapes, in the quiet understanding that once, long ago, humans lived among giants, not above them, not separate from them, but alongside them. As the final light of another imagined day fades across the frozen land, the group settles once more into their familiar rhythm of evening. The fire glows gently, its warmth steady but not overwhelming. Around it, figures sit in quiet presence, their movements slow, their awareness still active but softened by the calm of night. There is no sense for them that this world will end, no knowledge that the mammoths will one day disappear, that the saber-tooth cats will no longer move through shadow, that the distant howls of dire wolves will fade into silence. For them, this world is not temporary. It is simply what is. And within that what is, they have found a way to live. Not by conquering the land, but by listening to it. Not by removing danger, but by understanding it. This is perhaps the most important part of their story, because survival here was never about control. It was about relationship. A relationship with the cold, with the wind, with the shifting ground beneath their feet. A relationship with the animals that shared their space, whether they were vast and slow-moving or silent and watchful. And a relationship with each other, built on cooperation, trust, and shared awareness. Everything was connected. Nothing existed in isolation. The mammoths shaped the land, and the humans followed their paths. The predators observed both, moving within the same patterns, guided by their own needs and instincts. The environment itself responded to all of it, adjusting slowly, continuously, creating a system that was both fragile and resilient at the same time. And within this system, humans were not the center. They were participants, observers, learners. As night deepens, the stars emerge once more, clear and steady in the cold sky. They have watched over countless nights like this, unchanged while everything below them shifts and evolves. To those resting near the fire, these stars are familiar, not mysterious, not distant in the way we might think of them now, but constant, reliable, a pattern that does not break. And perhaps, in a world where so much requires attention and adaptation, that kind of constancy offers a quiet sense of reassurance. The fire crackles softly. Breath rises in faint clouds. The land beyond remains vast and silent. And within this small circle of warmth, there is a moment that feels almost timeless. Not dramatic, not grand, just still. It is in moments like this that something deeper can be felt, not in words, but in presence, a sense of belonging within the world, not separate from it, a recognition that life, even in its most challenging forms, carries a kind of quiet harmony when it is lived with awareness and respect. The people here do not think of themselves as fragile, nor do they see themselves as powerful. They simply exist within the balance. They know the land can take as easily as it gives. They know that each day requires attention, but they also know that life continues, steadily, persistently, and that is enough. Over time, though they cannot see it, this balance will change. The climate will shift. The vast ice will recede. The great herds will thin. The predators will vanish, and the world they know will slowly become something else. But even as that happens, something of this way of life will remain, not in the exact form, not in the same rhythms, but in the deeper patterns, in the human ability to observe, to adapt, to cooperate, to find calm within uncertainty. These are things that do not disappear. They evolve, they carry forward, even into worlds that look very different from this one. And so, as we look back across time, imagining this quiet, frozen landscape, it is not only the mammoths that we remember, or the saber-toothed cats, or the distant calls of wolves. It is the feeling of it, the stillness, the awareness, the balance. A way of living that was shaped not by speed or noise, but by patience, by attention, by a deep and continuous connection to the world. The fire burns lower. The figures around it grow still. Sleep comes, slowly and naturally, as it always does. Outside, the land stretches endlessly, holding the traces of everything that has moved across it. The paths of mammoths, the silent steps of predators, the careful footprints of humans who learned over countless days how to exist within a world that asked much, but also gave enough. And somewhere in that vastness, in the quiet space between memory and imagination, the Ice Age continues. Not as it was, but as something gently remembered, a slow story carried forward through time, inviting us to pause, to listen, and to rest within the calm understanding that long before the world became loud and fast, there was a place where life moved differently, where humans walked beside giants, and where survival was not a struggle against the world, but a quiet conversation with it. And yet, even as sleep settles gently over the group, the night is never entirely still. Darkness in the Ice Age is not empty. It is layered. It carries depth, distance, and movement that the eyes cannot always follow. Beyond the soft glow of the fire, the land stretches outward into shadow. And within that shadow, life continues with a quiet intensity that feels almost separate from the day. Those who remain awake understand this. They sit or stand just beyond the warmth, where the firelight fades into dim shapes and uncertain outlines. Their breathing is slow. Their movements are minimal. They are not tense, but they are present, listening in a way that reaches beyond sound alone. Night listening is different. During the day, the world reveals itself through sight, shapes, tracks, movement across the horizon. But at night, perception shifts inward. The ear becomes more important. The body itself becomes a kind of instrument, sensitive to small changes in air, in vibration, in silence. Silence especially has meaning. It is not simply the absence of sound. It is a condition that can change. And when it changes, it is noticed. At first, the night may feel calm. The wind moves gently across the land. The fire crackles softly. The slow rhythm of breathing from those asleep creates a quiet pattern within the shelter. It is almost peaceful in a way that feels steady and unbroken. But then, something shifts. Perhaps the wind pauses, or perhaps it changes direction, carrying with it a scent that is not immediately recognized, but felt as different. One of the watchers lifts their head slightly, not abruptly, just enough. Their attention sharpens. They do not wake the others, not yet. Instead, they listen. And in the distance, barely there, a sound forms, a low movement through snow, not the heavy, steady press of a mammoth, not the scattered light steps of smaller animals, something in between, measured, controlled. It comes and goes, not constant, but present enough to be real. The watcher remains still. To move too quickly would be to break the balance. Instead, they allow their awareness to extend outward, tracing the sound, estimating its distance, its direction. Another watcher, positioned on the opposite side of the shelter, senses the same shift. Their eyes open fully now, their body adjusting without sudden motion. There is a quiet connection between them, a shared understanding that does not need to be spoken. Something is nearby, not immediate, but close enough to matter. The fire becomes important now. Its glow is steady, but its size is considered carefully. Too small, and it offers little deterrence. Too large, and it draws attention from farther away. The balance must be maintained, even here, even in the quietest hours. One of the watchers reaches gently toward the fire, adjusting a piece of fuel. The movement is slow, deliberate, designed not to create sudden light or sound. The flame responds, growing slightly, casting longer shadows across the ground. Outside that light, darkness deepens, and within that darkness, something watches. It may be a wolf, moving alone for a time before rejoining its pack. It may be more than one, their positions spread out, observing from different angles. Or perhaps it is something quieter still, something that moves with less sound, less need for coordination. The exact form is not always known, and it does not need to be. What matters is the presence, the awareness that the boundary between safety and exposure is thin, and that just beyond it, other lives continue with their own quiet intentions. The sleepers shift slightly in their rest, not fully awake, but not entirely unaware. Even in sleep, the body listens. This is something learned over time, a kind of partial awareness that remains active beneath the surface of rest. It does not prevent sleep, but it allows for quick response if needed. A child stirs, turning closer to the warmth, drawn instinctively toward the center of the group. An adult adjusts their position slightly, creating space, maintaining the subtle structure that keeps everyone protected without needing to be fully conscious of it. The watchers remain steady. Time passes slowly. The sound outside changes. Sometimes it grows slightly closer. Sometimes it fades. The rhythm is uncertain, but not chaotic. It follows a pattern that suggests observation rather than immediate action. Whatever is out there is not rushing. It is assessing. And in that assessment, a quiet decision is forming. The humans, through their stillness, their cohesion, their controlled presence, communicate something in return. They are not isolated. They are not unaware. They are not easy. This communication happens without words, without direct contact. It is expressed through posture, through the positioning of bodies, through the steady glow of fire that signals both presence and readiness. Eventually, the sound begins to shift away, not abruptly, but gradually. the movement becomes less distinct, more distant, blending once again with the natural sounds of the night. The tension, which never fully took hold, begins to soften. The watchers do not relax completely, not immediately. They continue to listen for a while longer, ensuring that the change is real, that the presence has truly moved on. Only then does their posture ease slightly, not into sleep, but into a quieter form of awareness. One may sit back, eyes still open, gaze softening as the immediate need for focus fades. Another may allow their breathing to deepen, their body settling into a more restful state while still maintaining a connection to the surroundings. This is how night passes, not in uninterrupted rest, but in cycles. Awareness, calm, subtle tension, release, over and over in slow, gentle rhythms that mirror the larger patterns of the world. Above, the stars remain unchanged. They do not react to the movements below. They do not shift with the presence of predator or prey. They simply continue, steady and distant, offering a kind of silent continuity that contrasts with the quiet uncertainty of life beneath them. As the hours move toward morning, the darkness begins to thin. Not suddenly, but gradually. The horizon softens once more, the faintest hint of light returning. The shapes of the land begin to reappear, first as outlines, then as more defined forms. The fire, now low and steady, becomes less necessary as the sky itself begins to offer light. The watchers notice this change first. Their attention shifts outward again, from the immediate space around the shelter to the broader landscape. The night has passed without incident. The presence that lingered nearby has moved on. Another cycle completed. Slowly, the sleepers begin to wake, not startled, not rushed, but in the same gradual way as always. A breath, a movement, a return to awareness. They do not know every detail of what passed during the night. They do not need to. What matters is that the group remains intact, that the balance was held, that awareness was enough. And as they rise once more to meet the day, there is no dramatic acknowledgement of the quiet tension that existed only hours before. It becomes part of the larger rhythm, absorbed into memory, shaping future awareness without needing to be spoken. Because in this world, survival is not only about what is seen, it is also about what is sensed in the dark, what is heard in silence, what is understood without certainty. And through it all, life continues, not loudly, not forcefully, but with a steady, quiet persistence that carries forward through each night, each dawn, each careful step taken across a land that is never fully at rest. Morning returns once more, as it always does, softly, without urgency. The horizon lightens, the frozen land slowly revealing itself again, as though nothing has changed. And in many ways, nothing has. The same wide plains stretch outward. The same distant shapes may appear and disappear. The same quiet patterns continue, steady and unbroken. But beneath this repetition, something deeper has been forming all along. Something not easily seen. Something carried within the people who move across this land. To live in a world shaped by creatures so large, so powerful, so present, is to grow into a particular kind of awareness. Not just of danger, but of scale, of relationship, of the understanding that life is not centered around human needs, but shared among many forms, each with its own rhythms and purposes. This awareness leaves a mark, not on the land alone, but on the mind, on the way a person thinks, moves, and understands their place in the world. As the group begins another day, their movements are as calm and deliberate as ever. Nothing appears different from the outside. They gather their tools. They adjust their clothing. They step out into the cold with the same quiet readiness that has guided them through countless days before. And yet, everything they do carries the imprint of the world they live within. The presence of mammoths has shaped how they walk across open ground, how they read distant movement, how they think in terms of time that stretches beyond immediate need. Mammoths move slowly but with purpose, and to observe them is to learn patience. The saber-tooth cats have shaped a different kind of awareness, one that pays attention to stillness, to absence, to the subtle signals that something unseen may be near. From them comes the understanding that danger is not always loud, not always obvious, and that perception must reach beyond what is immediately visible. The dire wolves have taught something else entirely: the power of coordination, the strength of moving together, of acting as a group with shared intention, where each individual contributes to a larger whole. Watching them has reinforced what humans already begin to understand within themselves: that survival is not solitary, it is shared. And the land itself, with its cold and its silence, has shaped perhaps the most enduring lesson of all: resilience, not through force, but through adaptation, through the ability to change, to adjust, to find balance within conditions that cannot be controlled. These lessons do not sit in the mind as thoughts. They live in the body, in the way a person steps carefully without needing to think about it, in the way eyes scan the horizon while hands continue their work, in the way the group moves as one, not through command, but through quiet alignment. This is what it means to be shaped by a world like this. And though these people do not reflect on it in the way we might now, the influence is constant. It defines them. It becomes part of what they are. As the day unfolds, the land once again reveals its familiar patterns. Perhaps a distant herd of mammoths appears, their slow movement cutting across the pale horizon like a memory that never fades. The group notices, as they always do, pausing just long enough to observe, to understand, before continuing on their path. There is no sense of ownership in their gaze, no desire to dominate or control, only recognition, a quiet acknowledgement of another life moving through the same space, following its own path. And in that recognition, there is something that feels almost like respect, not as a concept, but as a natural response. The saber-tooth cats may still move somewhere beyond sight, their presence felt more often than seen. The wolves may call across distant valleys, their voices carrying through the cold air as they coordinate their movements. All of this continues, day after day, season after season, and the humans remain part of it, not separate, not above, but within. This way of living creates a kind of identity that is difficult to describe in simple terms. It is not built on individual achievement or accumulation. It is not defined by control over the environment or the creatures within it. Instead, it is built on relationship, on the understanding that survival depends on awareness, on cooperation, on the ability to read the world and respond to it with care. This identity is quiet. It does not announce itself, but it is strong because it has been shaped by necessity, refined through countless small decisions, reinforced through every moment of successful adaptation. And though this specific world will not last forever, though the mammoths will one day fade into absence, though the great predators will disappear from these lands, the identity formed here will not vanish completely. it will change. It will carry forward in different forms, in different places, but always rooted in the same fundamental patterns: the ability to observe, to adapt, to cooperate, to find balance within uncertainty. These are not temporary traits. They are enduring. They become part of what it means to be human. As evening approaches once more, the group settles again into their familiar rhythm. The fire is lit, the shelter is arranged, the quiet circle of warmth forms within the vastness of the land. Nothing feels final, nothing feels like an ending, only continuation, the steady unfolding of life within a world that asks much, but also offers something in return, a deep, continuous connection to everything that exists within it. And as darkness returns, as the stars appear once more in their silent constancy, there is a sense that this way of life, though distant to us now, still echoes somewhere beneath the surface of who we are. Not in exact memory, but in instinct, in the quiet pull toward awareness, in the calm that can still be found when we slow down, when we listen, when we allow ourselves to exist, not above the world, but within it, because long ago, in a place of ice and silence, among creatures of immense size and quiet power, humans learned something essential. They learned how to belong. And that belonging, shaped in the presence of mammoths, saber-tooth cats, and wolves, did not end when those creatures disappeared. It remained, softly, steadily, carried forward through time. A quiet inheritance from a world that no longer exists as it once did, but still lives on in the rhythms of awareness, patience, and connection that continue, even now, to shape the human story.